have the privilege of introducing our chief guest, Nirupama Rao, former Foreign Secretary of India. She was the Foreign Secretary to the Government of India from 2009 to 2011. She was the first women spokesperson from 2001 to 2002 of the Indian Foreign Office. She served as India's first Women High Commissioner, Ambassador to Sri Lanka from 2004 to 2006, and to the People's Republic of China from 2006 to 2009. She was the Ambassador of India to the United States from 2011 to 2013. In retirement, she has taught at Brown and Columbia Universities, was a fellow at the New School in New York, and a public policy fellow at the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. She is also the vice chairman of Tibet House, New Delhi, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Her book entitled The Fractured Himalaya, India, Tibet, and China, 1949 to 1962, was published in 2010. Just before we walked in, she donated one of the copies of the book, and it's a great reading for all of us. Welcome, ma'am.
Director of IIM Bangalore, Professor Dinesh, Professor Malavika, whose eloquent remarks were very meaningful and thoughtful. And as she mentioned, we have a special link, a special bond, because of the fact that we both studied at Mount Carmel College, one of the leading national institutions for women's education in the country, and other distinguished members of the faculty present on the stage and in the audience, to the award winners and to the alumni who are also here with us today, to our friends in the audience, and I'd like to give a special shout out to the youngest member in the audience. Would you stand up, please? I think that little boy and this little girl, both of them, let's give them. Before I commence my speech, I'd like to speak a little about how I came into public life. A very unexpected route in some senses of the word, because long before I sat across negotiating tables or debating policy frameworks, I sat with literature. And people sometimes ask what literature has to do with leadership. The answer to me is everything. Literature trains you to recognize that every individual carries a universe inside him or her. It reminds you that the metrics of performance and the language of efficiency contains fears and ambitions, heartbreak and hope. So a spreadsheet will tell you whatever strategy may work, and literature tells you whether it matters. Now, management schools such as yours, this distinguished institution of national excellence, teach you to diagnose problems and design solutions. And literature teaches you those quiet tremors that precede those problems. And it teaches you, as the director just now said, that logic without empathy becomes indifference. And that data, which is devoid of dignity, is very damaging to you and to those around you. So intelligence is not only the ability to reason, but the duty of care. Now, literature prepares you, but it was diplomacy that tested me. And diplomacy is really management without a safety net. Every negotiation is a study in human ambition, a balancing act between the world as it is and the world as it might be. If only we could convince each other to trust each other a little more. And it requires patience that doesn't drift into passivity. It asks you to stand for something solid while understanding the anxieties of those who stand elsewhere. So diplomats, like managers, know that success is often what doesn't happen. It is really the conflict that you are able to avert, the misunderstandings that you're able to ease, and the prevention of a crisis that really no one will read about. You may imagine diplomacy as grand gestures and dramatic breakthroughs, but insiders know that more than often it is a careful tending of relationships. And it's the courage to persist in the unglamorous work of cooperation. And I think that applies equally to management. So leadership is really a kind of moral engineering, and you are constantly calibrating between what is urgent and what is merely loud, who needs to be convinced and who needs simply to be heard. And you learn again and again, and this is my experience, that power is never a thing that you possess. It is a thing that other people entrust to you, and they can withdraw it in a heartbeat if they no longer see the purpose behind it. So literature and diplomacy may seem very far away from your campus map if you just look at the surface tensions, but put them together and you discover something essential. A leader is not the person with the most answers, but it's the one who stays curious the longest. I think you never stop learning. And you don't dominate the table, you get others to sit down at it. And it gives you the blueprint, like management does, to build institutions. It gives us the conscience to keep ourselves human. I thought I would start my talk with this, and now I will proceed to what I have to say. So I'm extremely privileged to be a part of your 52nd Foundation Day celebrations, and congratulations to the IIM for all the awards and recognition that you have garnered as an institution of utmost excellence. You define managerial excellence in India and abroad, and you are more than just a school of management, you're a school of consequence. Ideas that you generate take wing, your alumni build, and the values you represent endure. Leaders you build are men and women of competence, but also of conscience, which is so important, ambitious, but deeply responsible. And it is that legacy and that spirit that all of us are gathered here to honor. And in the process, we will also examine the world for which you are preparing the next generation of leaders. The theme of my lecture is Beyond Borders, Preparing for a World in Transition. It is a phrase laden with both promise and tension. Borders are back in some places, they have never gone away in others, and yet they are dissolving in some situations. Technology is the buzzword today, but a classic human value, which is trust, is eroding. Economics is being rewired. Climate is a central actor. And most of all, we are witnessing the change of an era. The question is not whether the world is changing, that is more than evident. The real question is whether we will be able to shape the transition or be shaped by it. And the architects of the next era are all sitting here in the audience today. My perspective that I try to bring before you today is shaped by my years in diplomacy, working with partners and adversaries across regions and ideologies. Today, the vocabulary of global affairs has shifted. Aid, alignment, and ideology were issues we once argued about. Now the key requirement is trust. Trust in supply chains, trust in data, trust in standards, trust in institutions. Trust is not sentiment. It is now strategy, and strategy for countries and companies now begins with a simple, profound question: who can we rely on when it matters? The global operating system is moving towards multipolarity. The locus of power is no longer one capital or expressed through one model. The United States remains central. China is a dynamic, risen force. Europe wants to be a moral and economic anchor. Russia is an aggrieved outlier seeking redress from history. And the Indo-Pacific is a theater of consequence. But there is also a third force cutting across geographies, and what, for want of a better name, we call the Global South. There is a host of emergent, aspirational nations that expect to be at the table when decisions are shaped. We are witnessing a revolution of rising expectations in this group of countries. These are countries that want to shape the global future, to have their voices heard, and to be counted. India has been pivotal in this shift. Our approach is not non-alignment, mired in history. It is multi-alignment, calibrated by real-life situations. We want to build bridges, not blocks. We deal with all, but do not allow our sovereignty to be compromised. And this is why India's presidency of the G20 mattered. What you saw was a moment of realignment. Issues that were once side notes, digital public infrastructure, climate finance, debt vulnerabilities, resilient supply chains, food and energy security, moved to the center. The concerns of the developing world were no longer polite paragraphs. They became structural priorities. India led in shaping this narrative. Think about what that means. A nation that 78 years ago was counted among the poorest, written off by the experts, told it was too diverse to govern, too poor to develop, too complex to modernize, that nation set the agenda for the world's leading economic forum. It was not a transformation that happened through serendipity. It was the contribution of generations of Indians who refused to accept other people's definitions of what was possible. Geopolitics today is no longer defined by territory and force alone. 5 new dimensions shape influence. First, supply chains are the new borders. Where you source from defines who you depend on. Strategic autonomy includes semiconductors, critical minerals, pharmaceuticals, and digital infrastructure. Secondly, technology is the new territory. Artificial intelligence, quantum, and space are domains of strategic control. Third, data is the new diplomacy. Nations now negotiate digital flows as they once negotiated sea lanes and corridors, air corridors. Fourth, climate is the new conflict line. Resource stress and extreme weather will frame security for decades. Fifth, narrative power is the new battleground. Perception shapes legitimacy, markets, and policy. In short, geoeconomics now determines corporate destiny, and the new generation you represent must be geopolitically literate. Economically, we have moved from a world optimized for efficiency to a world reorganized for resilience. For 3 decades, globalization followed a simple principle: produce where costs are lowest, assemble where specialization is highest, sell where markets are largest. It was a period of extraordinary prosperity and extraordinary fragility. In 2020-21, a microscopic virus taught us that efficiency without resilience is fatally flawed. The world has not abandoned globalization, but it has begun to rebalance it. This is not de-globalization, perhaps you can call it re-globalization, built on diversification, trusted partners, and shock-resistant systems. Now, businesses no longer ask, where is production cheapest? The question has become, where is production safest and most trusted? You see the rise of friend-shoring, near-shoring, and increasingly India-shoring. India is not only a market of scale, it becomes a partner of principle. As investors pursue the China plus one, they search for an ecosystem that combines democratic stability, demographic vitality, digital inclusion, and a deepening manufacturing base. India ticks the boxes. We are moving from the back office of the world to what is perceived as the brain's trust of the world, the digital architect of the world, and increasingly, we could be and we must become the production platform for the world. The decisive capital of tomorrow will not be financial capital alone. It will include trust capital, credibility that attracts partnerships, data capital, digital sovereignty that enables innovation, demographic capital, which I just talked about, young minds that are educated, skilled, and healthy, capability when it comes to climate capital in renewables, storage, green hydrogen, and circularity, and cultural capital, the power to shape the global imagination through values and narrative. And India has strengths all across these 5, but mere potential does not assure success. We have to convert advantage into strategy and strategy into replicable models. Technology, meanwhile, has crossed the threshold from drawing board to actual feel-the-ground terrain. Artificial intelligence is not a niche pursuit any longer. It is infrastructure that is turning existential, that will define our future. Those who build and govern AI ecosystems will shape industries and social rhythms from work and learning to credit and care. The new inequality may be the intelligence gap between nations and populations. But technology is not fate. It reflects human intention, carrying the bias of its creators and the values of its users. And that is why leadership in technology must be ethical. We should not outsource human judgment to algorithms. Efficiency is no substitute for empathy, and progress cannot come at the cost of dignity. India has chosen a path. We chose technology for public purpose, not for monopoly. Digital public infrastructure, identity, payments, health, education, logistics was built as interoperable public goods, not gated platforms. And what does that mean in human terms? It means a woman in a remote village in Rajasthan can open a bank account in minutes without travel, without gatekeepers, without pleading for dignity. We decided that the infrastructure of technological opportunity should go public. We scaled inclusion and truly established, in my view, a national public space. So when the world asks whether technology can expand access rather than deepen divides, India answers the question in practice, not just in theory. The next wave of AI will intensify this challenge. Deep fakes will blur the truth. Automated systems will test fairness. Predictive tools will risk perpetuating bias. Therefore, we have to lead not only in AI development, but in AI governance, transparent, accountable, and human-centered. These are not engineering questions alone. They are civilizational questions. And India can help frame the answers because it is a proven testing ground built on inclusiveness, innovation, and dynamic adaptation. Another transition is planetary. Climate change now determines economic destiny and national security. Droughts and floods destabilize food systems. Extreme heat cripples productivity. Rising seas displace communities. Fragile grids expose our vulnerabilities. So climate change is not an abstraction in a report. It is a mother wondering if her children will have water, a farmer looking at a failed crop, a future being written in real time. And we must anticipate it, envisage it, so we are well prepared to address these challenges. And this discourse about climate must move from guilt to responsibility and from pledges to execution. Here in this country, we have pursued practical coalitions, the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and the Global Biofuels Alliance, all of them grounded in fairness and feasibility. Sustainability has to become the language of business and not only of policy. The companies that will endure will be regenerative enterprises, those that restore ecosystems, respect resources, and design for circularity. This is not idealism. It is about meeting risk with resilience, mitigation, and adaptation. If the first half of this address described the landscape, the rest is going to be about agency, what we choose to do with the world as it is and the world as it could be. For decades, India was described as the nation of the future, and all the while we have been adapting through steady reform, through the dignity of last mile delivery, in the routine miracle of digital inclusion, and in the persistence of a young workforce building and learning. India is no longer waiting to be invited to shape the global agenda. We would like to co-author the script. We are one of the world's largest economies and on course to climb further. But rankings, we know, are always built on development as justice, growth that broadens opportunity and deepens dignity, that leaves no one behind. Hundreds of millions have moved out of multidimensional poverty in a generation. Millions of women have entered finance networks and entrepreneurship. Small enterprises are joining formal supply chains. Digital rails reduce friction and corruption. Consider the magnitude of that transformation. In one generation, we have lifted more people out of poverty than some continents actually house. We have connected more people to banking than many developed nations have citizens. We vaccinated 1 billion people in a pandemic. These are not just statistics, they are proof of what is possible when a democracy decides that every life has equal worth, when a nation refuses to leave anyone behind. This is the grammar of hope, hope backed by competence and openness. Now, leadership in such an era must be principled without rigidity, modern without ruthlessness, and strong without aggression. India as a country can embody this because we do not treat diversity as a problem to be tolerated. We treat it as a strength to be organized. Prosperity is not measured by markets alone, it is measured by dignity. And technology must serve humanity, must not replace it. So these are the civilizational values inherent to us as a nation. They are not political lines that I am articulating. And nations that carry such values do not need to raise their voices because the world eventually listens. India's development journey offers a framework others can adopt, a three-dimensional model of progress. First, democracy that delivers, freedom strengthened by accountability, and debate aligned with outcomes. Second, inclusive development, measuring success not only on how high GDP rises, but by how widely benefits are spread. And then, as I mentioned, the digital for public good technology, which expands access and does not entrench divides. So this is humanity-centered progress. The director referred to it when he spoke of the travels of Xuanzang, the 7th century Chinese pilgrim who braved the sands of the Central Asian deserts to come to India to understand what our civilizational strength really encapsulated, that resilience and that inclusivity. But future leaders, all of you who sit in the audience today, must help build an even more dynamic future for India. Because that future cannot be written by government alone. It has to be written in boardrooms and studios, labs and logistics hubs, startups and social enterprises, classrooms and community networks. It will be written by the entrepreneur who sees a local problem and builds a solution that scales, by the engineer who refuses to accept that good technology must be expensive technology, by the social innovator who knows that the distance between poverty and prosperity is sometimes just one good idea, executed with compassion and competence. Across the world, institutions face a crisis of trust. The issue is not only corruption, it is disconnection. Decisions made too far from people they affect. So leadership must return to these first principles: integrity, courage, empathy, responsibility, and public purpose. Business cannot thrive in a society that fails. Profit without purpose is incomplete. And strategy matters, and above all, character is strategy under pressure. Swami Vivekananda reminded us we are responsible for what we are and whatever we wish ourselves to be, we have the power to make ourselves. Those words burn with a urgency today. You have the power now, not later. The question is, what will you do with it? Leadership begins with responsibility and not with entitlement. Coming to women's leadership, this is not a social add-on. It is a strategic imperative. No society can rise if half its talent is sidelined. When women lead, outcomes improve across governance, health, finance, and innovation. I think of Ritu Karidhal, Mission Director of Chandrayaan-2, whose work helped guide our spacecraft to the moon, of fighter pilots defending our skies, of self-help groups where women who were once told they could not handle money now handle millions, invest wisely, and uplift entire communities. These are not exceptions. They mark the landscape of modern India. The Women's Reservation Act is not only a constitutional milestone, it is a declaration that the future will be co-authored. If your boardrooms do not reflect diversity, your strategies are incomplete. And inclusion is not charity. It is intelligence. It is how organizations future-proof themselves. And I remember these words from the Shanti Parva in the Mahabharata. Strinam devaha upajivanti. Even the gods depend on the strength of women. Coming to corporate ethics, they can't be relegated to compliance desks. Around the world, success has sometimes been celebrated without examining its foundations, and we have seen the consequences. Financial manipulation packaged as innovation, exploitation disguised as growth, opacity rewarded as strategy. When ethics collapse, systems collapse. Values are not obstacles to performance, they are the scaffolding for it. And the companies that endure treat ethics as culture, not paperwork. And they understand that social license is a strategic asset, not a public relations line. What does that mean for management education and IIM Bangalore? It means moving from teaching problem solving to cultivating future building with an open mind, and I'm sure you are already doing this. The world needs leaders who are economically intelligent and geopolitically aware, technologically fluent and ethically grounded, data-driven and human-centered, competitive in markets and collaborative across borders, ambitious in goals and anchored in purpose. So the age of single discipline leadership is past. This is the age of integrated leadership, leaders who translate across domains, business and policy, science and society, finance and climate, local knowledge and global standards. And the same applies to any other field of work, whether it's governance, diplomacy, my old field. I think in most areas of life which involves dealing with social issues. You came here to get more than a piece of paper called a degree. Your education is not a transaction, it is meant to transform. Your mandate is to create what Baba Saheb Ambedkar called a Prabuddha Bharat, an enlightened India shaped by knowledge, justice, and human dignity. I see that as a responsibility to build spaces across this country where intellect is valued, inquiry is free, and humanism is a lived ethic. This Prabuddha Bharat is what we must create from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, not as an ideal, but as a national duty. Now, these are not romantic notions from another age. They are principles that should continue to guide us, because a nation that neglects the life of the mind will eventually suffer the poverty of ideas. And the poverty of ideas is the most dangerous poverty of all. IIM Bangalore has the heritage and the capacity to lead this shift. Your graduates already influence policies, build institutions, scale companies, and strengthen civil society. Allow me to offer a leadership compass for a world in transition. Lead beyond borders, build for India and the world at once. Design for impact, not applause. Do what is necessary, not what is fashionable. Build resilience before scale. Grow strong, then grow fast. Like Japan, Korea, South Korea, China, and Singapore, learn from global best practices, live the examined life, leverage each of your strengths into global reach. Like China, never settle for the small or the middling, aim for the global heights. Rethink modernity in Indian terms, retain the Bharatiya Atma, but think in terms of learning from the wisdom of the world also. Incorporate Vishwa Vidya into your plans for the future. Build a cosmopolitan, open-minded India that shapes global imagination beyond borders. And one piece of advice, and which I learned from literature and perhaps to some extent from diplomacy, cultivate the art of listening. Listen carefully. Listen attentively. Don't listen impatiently, waiting for your turn to speak. It's very important to cultivate the art of listening. To the students in this hall, you are not only future managers, you are trustees of India's next quarter century. The years ahead, what is called our Amrit Kal, will shape the destiny of our nation and lead it to developed country status, and may influence the character of this century globally. Look around this auditorium. Your classmates reflect every corner of India, languages, religions, backgrounds. You are India in microcosm. If you can build together here, collaborate, compete fairly, support and challenge one another, respect difference while pursuing excellence, you can prove that the Indian model works. You become living proof that diversity is not a weakness to be managed, but a superpower to be unleashed. So no government program can achieve what a generation with courage can do. I'm often asked what public service means to me as a former civil servant. I say that it means strengthening the society that made you. And this public service is not confined to Parliament or the civil services. Public service can be an entrepreneur solving a social problem, a technologist building tools for inclusion, a teacher defending futures, a journalist defending the truth, a startup founder in agriculture, a business building livelihoods, and a leadership delivering solutions. Wherever someone works with integrity, responsibility, and public purpose, that is public service to me. We stand at the intersection of responsibility and possibility, and the world is not asking India for permission, it is asking India for leadership. And India is looking to leaders like you, and public service is the bridge that leads you to that future. So let us lead with courage and humility, with innovation and integrity, with ambition and empathy. Let's build markets that reward responsibility and technologies that expand dignity and institutions that outlast the moment. And I remember those words from Chanakya Niti, Parahitartham idam shariram. This life is meant for service to others. Borders may divide nations, but they must never divide vision. The future will not be built by those who stand behind walls, but by those who build bridges across them. And the world is waiting not for that perfect plan, not for a risk-free path, not for permission from those who came before. The world is waiting for you to begin. So begin, and begin today. Begin here. Begin with the belief that what you do matters, that where you come from does not limit where you can go, that the circumstances of your birth do not determine the significance of your life. India believed that 78 years ago when the odds were impossible. Look what we built. Now it's your turn. The foundation has been laid, the tools have been given to you, and the opportunity is yours to grasp. Build something worthy of more than this moment. Build something worthy of the potential that we represent as a nation. Build something worthy of a future that is counting on you. So let me offer my grateful thanks and my warmest wishes to IIM Bangalore and to your community on this Foundation Day. May your ideas continue to take wing, your values continue to endure, and your leadership continue to serve not just India, but humanity across borders. India believes in you. Now, young graduates, it is your turn to lead. Thank you.